undersold his intelligence, and he'll do the rest. But like we make the simple complex. Right. This dude needs information. Let's go!
Classy.
Welcome to the Uncommon Connector podcast by Functional Training Zone. I am your host, Kenyatta Griffin, along with our special guest, Mr. Rickkay L.T. King. Mr. King is the co-founder and intended director for Phoenix International School of the Arts, the first public art school in Charles County, Maryland. Born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, Mr. King's interests involve mental health awareness and promoting international education to marginalized communities. Mr. King received his bachelor's degree from Roosevelt University in psychology in 2011. He obtained a master's degree in psychology from Pepperdine University in 2015 and is currently in dissertation phase of a doctorate in global leadership and change at Pepperdine University. His dissertation research surrounds around foreign language instruction in marginalized communities and how African American vernacular English is viewed in these classrooms. Good morning, Mr. King. How are you today?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Enjoying this rainy Saturday.
Yeah, right.
Nothing but just good weather and April Fool's Day, I guess.
That's how it goes in April usually.
Right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the work you do?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, I'm Rickkay King. So, one, thank you guys so much for having me on today. Really looking forward to kind of chat with you guys about my career choice and patterns. Definitely, just love being a part of these aspects and kind of sharing the information I can to be useful to others. But start with, as you mentioned, a little bit about what I do. As you said, I am one of the co-founders of Phoenix International School of the Arts. We are the first public art school, the first charter school, and the first arts innovation school within Charles County, Maryland. So my work overall kind of usually surrounds different nonprofit and education arenas, especially when it comes to being an entrepreneur, really starting and beginning aspects. So I would say I'm one of the key people who usually is brought in to kind of help get things going, lay out the vision for what the plan is for the future and what for the people who will come after me as well.
Okay. So how did you get introduced into this?
So I've always been a part of education in some realm or fashion. I actually taught for a while. I was always in higher education. So I taught graduate school for a while. So getting into the field of K-12 education was actually something I was pulled into. I wasn't initially, I never initially went into it because one, I'm the oldest of 10 siblings. So I always ran from children.
Okay.
I was like, I've done this my entire life. Let me get away from children. Let me be around adults. But something always pulled me back to high school students, to middle school students. And some always kind of put me back to that demographic. So I kind of have to chalk it up and realize that this is where I'm supposed to be in a lot of ways.
Okay.
Because my career choices kept bringing me back there. So when it comes to the school and per se, actually a previous coworker who I was around, we both started nonprofits a while back. And she put me in a few years ago because she moved back to her hometown. She kind of sat and thought about who she would need to help her get a school open. And she said I was one of the first people that came to mind. So we chatted one day, and she was like, she messaged me on LinkedIn and asked, how much will I have to pay you to move across the country? Because I was living in LA at the time. Well, she thought I was, but I actually had just moved here 2 weeks prior to Maryland.
Okay.
And when I let her know I was moving, I was here already. She just got extremely ecstatic, and it kind of went from there. So we of course chatted about it, and now we're getting ready to open this fall.
Okay, so you could kind of say that was destiny, huh?
Yeah, definitely intervened there immediately, right?
Yeah. So what changed your mind? What made you move back to this area, though?
So, of course, as you mentioned, from Chicago, Illinois, I always lived in major cities. So I've lived in Atlanta, lived in New York, I lived in LA for a number of years, and I was there for grad school. And after being in LA for about 6 or 7 years, it was kind of, I got to the point where it was like, all right, this is the longest place I've been outside of my hometown. It's time to time for some change, time for to see or try something new. Always been attracted to cities, so our next option was the DMV area. So we moved here to DC in the end of 2018. And ideally, with that in mind, it was like, with my educational background and with this being a place where nonprofits can thrive and, of course, be connected to those government and different aspects of funding, this is where I want to be to make sure I go to the next step in my career because I wasn't in entertainment. And of course, that's what, LA is based in for the most part. So I felt like I was getting in a stagnant position in there career-wise. So I wanted to kind of switch it up a bit.
Okay. So is that what made you transition to the mental health awareness part of it?
No, so mental health awareness has always been like something I've been keen to. My first two degrees are in psychology, so it's always something that's been a path of mine. I initially actually wanted to be a therapist. That was my core reason for going to psychology.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, I'm the oldest of 10, and one of my key reasons for going to psychology in the first place was just because I was always just so surprised and shocked that me and all my siblings are so different in so many ways. So like, how is this possible? We all grew up in the same place, ate the same food, had the same parents for the most part. Why is everybody like so different? So my question has always been trying to figure that out. What kind of led me to psychology in the first place. But as I kind of continue the process and work in different mental health areas, I noticed I like psychology still, like a huge passion of mine, but I didn't want to do the therapy part, especially just not yet. So I know people get burnt out, and especially like considering the past few years we've had, I know I'd have probably been throw my hands up at therapy at this point. So I want to make sure like I do it when I'm at a place where I'm like, okay, I'm ready to sit in this for a while. So I chose with my psychology to kind of go a different route in the educational spectrum to actually teach it. So I was kind of teaching psychology courses on a grad school level for a while.
Nice, that's pretty interesting. So how does second languages fit into all of that?
Yeah, so what has, maintained a huge like personal like goal of mine overall has been like, getting minority males, especially marginalized populations abroad. So I had the unique opportunity to study abroad when I was an undergraduate at Clark Atlanta University.
Okay.
And I spent the entire summer in Barcelona, Spain. And being from Chicago South Side and from the inner city, like I never thought I would even be that far away from home ever.
Right.
And just that experience and just being over there and so many of the peers who I met there who were from all over the world, they like already spoke like 2, 3, 4 languages already. I was like, how are you guys already fluent in this when we have like we're barely getting the English language down pat, and we can barely like get approval for our own home language in our school space. Yet, you go abroad and they're already speaking like several languages like fluently before they're like 15, 16, 17 years old in some spaces.
Yeah, that does make a difference.
So because of that, and because of like just the experience I had abroad and how like life changing it was for me when I got back, one of the first things I did towards the end of my master's degree was start a nonprofit called the Now Boarding Corporation. Okay. And the goal of that organization primarily was to increase study abroad rates among marginalized populations, specifically marginalized males, because we're always, especially Black males, like the last ones on the list of every statistic. Right. So I really want to kind of do something to increase that, considering the experience I had. And with that kind of led me to kind of merging my passion and my career and my education all together in one loop. And that's kind of what led to a nonprofit and even what led to where I am right now.
Nice. So do you feel like learning abroad advances our perspective, or does it increase our ability to learn other things or faster or quicker? Like, what's your assessment on that?
With that, I definitely think it like drastically changes your perception just on everything. So with me, being a young boy, like Black boy from the South Side of Chicago, I didn't realize like how, in so many ways, small my footprint was when you think about the grand scheme of things of the world, like and the grand schemes of things when it comes to other cultures, other populations, other people outside of your little bubble, and really realize that it's like so much else out there that I could be looking into, that I could be exploring, that I can be comparing and contrasting to my own personal experience. I realized when I got back that so many of my peers just did not have that connection. They just did not have that, insight to be like, oh, well, this is one way to look at things, but what about how these other cultures look at things, or how these other group of people look at things? And I really want to kind of change that, of course, for just people in my immediate circle, but just also for our community overall. Because considering our background within this country, we've been, really kind of sheltered just to be thought of in one way. And that often
Right.
affects our own internal like insight in regards to how we feel about ourselves too. So I really want to break people out of that.
Yeah, that's true. That's pretty cool. That's really cool, actually. So what do you think has been more valuable to you in your success? Has it been your experiences or your education or both?
I would definitely say both because I would say without the education led me into the experience. Like if I would have not
Hmm.
have went away to college, if I would not have like been around so many people from different places, even in my when I went away to Clark Atlanta University and just meeting so many different Black people from different
Right.
parts of the country, like if I didn't have those experiences, which were fueled through education, it wouldn't have led
Right.
to where I am today. And I always kind of lean on a lot of my successes, like because of my peers and because of people around me who are also motivated to do things and change the lives of the people around them in their community. So that kind of fueled me in my experience. But I would always kind of commend that to like my education. It's because of my education I got to travel. You know, it's because of the education I got to study abroad. It's because of education that I moved to LA in the first place. Like these
Right.
things were always connected to education. So I always kind of lean back on that aspect as being one of the key drivers to my success because they wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't take those leaps in educational spaces. So of
Right.
course, the learning part is great, and of course, I love learning. I love being in class, and just love learning things new, learning new things. But oftentimes, when people kind of think about the education piece, like, oh, I don't, it's not my vibe. I don't need that. But and we
Yeah.
miss the aspect of how that connects us to so many other things, just
Right.
like the professors that are there, the new people that are there, and just the connections you can make. And I know a lot of people who I went to college with who that might not have finished, but they're doing amazing things right now. It's like because they went there and they were around all these people who kind of fueled their fire and
Right.
fueled the things they are interested in. It kind of just help being in a different space. And that often doesn't happen as often if you kind of like stay home or if you stay within your same bubble throughout your entire life.
Okay. That's true. I did let me see. I went to school freshman and sophomore year and then finished a little bit later down the line, but it definitely adds some value to
Mm-hmm.
life and just other decisions. And you get to see how other people live, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
still in still locally, you get this people still live differently than you. So
Yes.
I do agree with that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your dissertation? I see it's about African American vernacular. Like, what can you explain exactly what that is?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm in the throes of it right now. We're wrapping up ideally, so trying to graduate this year, so I can graduate before the school opens, of course. But
Okay.
so the dissertation topic is African American Vernacular English and its effects on the foreign language classroom. So
Mm,
I take this as an aspect of kind of mixing and merging all the things that have been on my mind throughout my educational career.
right.
So I was always one of those younger kids who, being from South Side of Chicago and going into the classroom, I kind of had this back and forth feel of, oh, some teachers were like, oh, you talk great. But at the same expense, they would say that my peers talk bad. So like
Um,
as I kind of got older and just kind of went through the whole language thing and then being abroad and like realizing how people like value the way that they speak in their home language, I kind of within this program, I got the opportunity to kind of really dig into ours. As Black people, we've been told our entire lives that the way we talk is slang, the way we talk is less than, the way we talk is not a form of standard English that we should be
right.
speaking and that should be reserved at home. But yet
Right.
you look at every culture everywhere and their home
Mm-hmm.
language is praised, their home language is merged into curriculum, their home language is made into a classroom or a course they can actually like learn the background and history on.
Right.
And as I was dug more into a Black language, which is also called, I really kind of uncovered this whole aspect of like, oh, we've had a language this entire time. Like
Mm-hmm.
our entire language is phonetically proven. It already has its own linguistic value. Researchers in the educational field has studied this for the past 50 years. And
Yeah.
also African American English is actually one of the most studied dialects of English like ever. Yet when it comes to our K-12 classrooms, like nobody knows this. We're still telling our students that they don't talk right. Well, you can't talk like that here. And no
Yeah.
one knows the background of that because the background of that really stems from, as language isolation happened, of course, prior to slavery. So even before getting to this country, they separated our people, our ancestors by language to ensure that there were no uprisings. So
Wow.
they immediately were separating us to ensure that we do not communicate together by the time we got to this new land. And of course, you get here and it's illegal for you to actually learn a language.
Right.
It's like when it
Yeah.
comes to this like track of us with language, it's like it's been this historic aspect that people don't realize that you get here, you don't have any connection to your home language, so you're separated from everybody who you could speak to. You
Mm-hmm.
can't learn the language here, so it's of course English being spoken here. They won't officially teach it to you, so you now have to pick up your own language from fragments of their English,
Right.
while also bringing back your Western African culture and languages that you have connected to, because that's how you know how to communicate. And in the midst of all that, you have to create a coded language.
Right.
Because
Right.
we have to speak and talk to each other without them knowing what's happening, because we're also in a aspect of tyranny right now, and
Mm-hmm.
everything that we do is looked at and viewed as terrible, and it can end to our demise, in many ways. So
Right.
there's even right now, like on Twitter, you can see like those different Abby like layouts where you see just a bunch of letters, and as a Black person,
Yeah.
like, that means get your black blank blank in the
Yeah.
house.
Yeah.
Like, and it just goes back to like our coded way of speaking to each other, because we had to do that. And all of that in itself makes up our language. And it's not a less than thing. It's not a slang thing. It's a thing that actually, like, towards the 1970s and 80s, when Ebonics was, start to be publicized by Black doctors and Black linguistics, in counter to that, they made academic language a thing. So they said, within educational spaces, you have to speak like this.
Right.
But it wasn't even a thing before. But right after Ebonics kind of hit the scene, it became a thing where you have to speak standard American English in the classrooms or professional spaces. That's the only thing we're going to accept.
Right. So
Which, like in many areas, of course, is because we're Black and everything that we do has been demonized in this country.
Right. Right. So what impact do you think that has had? Has it been detrimental to our community as far as advancement in school, work, business?
I feel like it's been detrimental in a lot of ways. So my dissertation really kind of focuses on how it's been detrimental, like in the linguistic learning area. So like from like point A, when I'm first stepping into your classroom as a young child, you're telling me I speak bad. That's really not going to motivate me to learn anybody else's language either, is it? So it's like you're already telling me like I'm in a deficit in regards to how I talk and how I communicate, even though I'm not. But that's what I'm getting. That's what I'm internalizing throughout my entire school career. So as I'm growing up and having to either code switch or talk, put on my high pitched voice when I'm on the phone or speaking with other people to advance myself, there really doesn't leave much room for me to kind of learn another language, because I already have this kind of idea in the back of my mind that the way I speak and the way I speak it at home or with friends or family is not good enough.
Right.
So I feel like it really often puts us at a disadvantage linguistically, because we are, constantly trying to fit into different scenarios that it's not authentic to ourselves, because we often know the space to be authentic in ourselves, especially in our language, in every space that we go into.
That's true. Do you think it'll change?
I'm trying. That's what that was one of the key things I'm doing with this school.
Right.
So we're in interviews right now, and I just interviewed 2 English teachers in the past week, actually. And I let them know that was one of the key things that we're diving into, like with this new school, with these middle school and high school students. Like, you're not going to go in these classrooms and tell them the way they do things is not good enough, or they can't do it.
Right.
So you need to teach them, and you need, so yourself learn and get out of your own like internalized aspects that you've been, coerced to believe, because what they're doing is not bad. And you need to get on board to understand like there's a way you can add that and help them, advance in the classroom.
Right. Right. Because if I understand correctly, there's most people have a different way of learning anyways. So you can't tell me that my way of learning is wrong just because I understand or learn differently.
Correct.
So what are some of the things you're looking for when you're interviewing for your instructors?
Right now, it's just those people who are ready to think outside the box. We really are looking for instructors who are ready to take hold of their own classrooms and not follow such stringent rules and laws when it comes to education. Our community that we're serving in Charles County, Maryland, was recently named like the most wealthy county for Black families in the country. So we really want to make sure we're kind of holding the education system accountable at this time to, as we're bringing in new people and new instructors, to understand that, hey, we're doing education differently. Historically, education in this country was built and set up for middle-class white families. And in a lot of ways, especially the public education school system, that has not changed. And we're not falling into the same trap. We're not falling into the same mechanism to ensure that, the education system isn't suited for the students who we actually have in the classroom. Our education instructors, our education curriculum, our education environment needs to reflect those who are in the classroom and what they understand and what they can use to strive with. And it has to include their home environment, it has to include their home language, and it has to include the things that they actually know already. Because when you bring things you know already to the classroom and you build off of that, then you excel. And that doesn't happen when you come in and you have to cut everything off and start from scratch. You've never learned anything before.
I totally agree with you. So you're finishing up your dissertation, you're opening up a school. How do you balance that with your personal life?
Right now, it's a struggle. It definitely is a struggle, but I definitely learned, especially over the past 2 years, to kind of work in my personal success and my personal health and mental health as well. So I'm not just one that's preaching about make sure you go to therapy, make sure you work out, make sure you do this.
Right.
I feel like I was one of those people for a while just because of my psychology background, but I had to kind of over the past few years, I have really had to kind of take a step back and realize like, hey, I can't be preaching what I'm not teaching, or teaching what I'm not preaching in a sense, and making sure I'm like really factoring in those aspects in. So what I do now is really kind of lay out my weeks to ensure that I'm intentionally making time for those things I need to do. So that's of course a gym, that's therapy biweekly, that's yoga, and if it's just watching a trash TV show or a random TV show for an hour, I like really make sure that I build those things into my week to ensure that these things are worthy of my time too, and they need my time. They're just as important as my work. They're just as important as my schooling, and they're just as important to keeping me whole as everything else. So not letting any one thing take full advantage of my time is what I've been aiming to get better at. Not perfect yet, but definitely aiming to get better at that every day.
Okay. So what do you think is your biggest success factor in this?
I think my biggest success factor thus far has really been leaning on my community. For a
Okay.
while, I was definitely in the mindset of, you always have to get to the person who's at the top and then have them help you and things like that.
Right.
But leaning on my community has really feel like been like a huge success factor for me. So even with every step in the process with this school so far, really looking at my like linear individuals and those people in my immediate circle, whether it be college friends or people or just friends in different areas, I noticed that in so many ways, and oftentimes we don't kind of dive into our friends and our people who are right next to us, like what they're into and what their interests are. And when you start uncovering that, you kind of get to build your own little community of success, and you guys become the the large entity
Right.
that everybody's actually attracted to and trying to get into, instead of the other way around. So I definitely would say my biggest success factor was kind of leaning on to those linear relationships that already exist and not trying to like, shoot for the stars for the person who's at the top and then help, get online with them. Basically just make
Right.
in a sense and make my own way with the people who are already right next to me.
Right. I definitely agree with that. You have to build your community, or 9 times out of 10 you are introduced to people who have the same interests. So
Mhm.
I guess you kind of, like I said, you just kind of build your community, and sometimes it's family and friends, and sometimes it's people you just meet.
Mhm.
So I definitely agree with that. So what do you think? What do you think you'll be in this educational industry? In this field? What do you think you'll be in the next, let's say, 5 years?
Where I'll be is so interesting in this area that I'm in right now because it's what I'm noticing is there's so many different ways. So being an entrepreneur and being someone who kind of like, is like starting new projects and starting the groundwork for so many programs like the nonprofit I started and the of course the school which we're starting now.
Right.
I'm noticing that this can go so many ways. So one of the directions it's looking like it could go is opening up more schools in rural areas. So one of our
Okay.
specialties with this school is an art school, and we definitely want to bring arts education to more rural areas. But one of the key things that we're noticing over time is, a lot of Black families, particularly, are getting pushed out of cities because of gentrification, high pricing for housing, and things like that. And
Right.
people are moving to more rural areas, and especially when it comes to people working more remote, people don't have to be
Mm-hmm.
in and out of key places that they people are going to where the space is, going to where they can really set up shop with their family and have the space and time and energy to kind of do all the things they always wanted to. And we notice that's kind of retracting a lot of people back to rural areas. So one of the
Right.
key things that I could see myself doing in the future is really opening up schools, particularly art schools in more rural areas that really target those families who are moving back to those areas that might not still have a good education system.
Right. I agree. So when you say arts, can you give a little bit more description on that?
Yeah, so my co-founder, she's has a huge arts background. She's done anything from musical theater to acting and things of that nature. So when she pulled me in, I was like, the arts sounds amazing. I'm connected to so many people in entertainment because of my time in LA. So like
Right.
all of my friends do like so many things from working with Netflix and ABC and everything that you can imagine in the entertainment area. And I've
Okay.
always been so close to the arts and everything entertainment, but it's always been like not my profession. So
Right.
it's been so interesting recently because as we're opening this art school, so we'll be the first art school in the county to offer, of course, museum studies, offer dance, offer acting, theater, and very similar to schools like Baltimore School of the Arts and Duke Ellington. So really trying to stand on the shoulders of those grand schools that already exist and really offer different methods of arts integration and arts teaching to our students. So we know, as you mentioned earlier, everybody learns differently.
Right, right.
We are a creative group of people. And so the standards sit down and learn and take this test is not really our vibe in a lot of ways culturally. So we really want to make sure we're doing things that, enhance students in different ways to show and spotlight their greatness. And oftentimes that is through different arts disciplines, we've noticed. So with the arts, we're really trying to kind of highlight that for those students who play instruments, for those students who want to draw, who students want to do fashion design, all those different aspects, and lead them directly to people in the careers who are already doing that to show them what success looks like before they graduate.
All right, that's
So
pretty
that's one of our
cool.
key goals right now when it comes to kind of focusing on the arts as an art school.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't think I don't think a lot of people, teachers and specifically, look at that as the arts as a way to connect with their students. So that's pretty cool. So is there a quote or a piece of literature or something that you use to motivate you? Because you have a lot going on. So how do you stay motivated?
Currently, one of my key motivations has consistently just been like my siblings. So like as they was
Okay.
a 10, like it's always like seeing like them and their progress in life. I always like try to lead by example in a lot of
Nice.
ways. And so I always like lean on people as like my motivation, like people around me and my friends who are doing amazing things in different areas. It's like they kind of help motivate me to kind of keep going. My husband, of
Right.
course, like he already has his doctorate. He's already, excelling in his career. So it's those aspects of like everything around me kind of keeps me motivated to keep going, to
That's
make
pretty
sure that
cool.
I can't stop doing what I'm doing. I have to make sure that I get to the level that I aim to strive for when it comes to my personal life, my professional life, and my educational career as well. So
Right.
I would really say this to people around me overall, kind of keep me motivated.
That's pretty cool. They say you're the sum of the five people you hang around with. So I mean, I can see where you're headed already. That's pretty cool though. So what are the next steps? You're finishing up your dissertation, you're opening up the school. What's after that?
So after that, something I've been thinking about recently. So when the school opens, I will be one of the directors for the school, just to really make sure that the culture and climate is, there. So,
Hmm.
we're starting school, starting new space, really kind of wanting to make sure that everything we've kind of worked on the past 3 to 4 years is really put into the school with passion. So,
Okay.
with that, just creating that environment to ensure students know like how we want the school to feel. Like when you come here, like parents, students, and teachers, like this is how we want this environment to feel. So really kind of diving into that and utilizing wrapping up my degree of global leadership to kind of
Mm.
organize and manage and lead other organizations in a similar fashion. So in the
Okay.
future, I would love to kind of like open other schools.
Right.
That would be something, or just being a part of the educational atmosphere, either in the K to 12 space or the higher education space, like I was before, and
Hmm.
connecting those dots. Because being in a higher education space, I noticed how it's so much that we lack and that we don't pass down to the K to 12 space.
Right.
So like all this
Right.
research that I'm learning doing my dissertation, and just even when it comes to Black language in general, it's like none of this stuff is being kind of filtered through to students who are in middle school and high school, and they should know
Right.
these things too. They should know that the way that they speak is like being researched in China and like being done in studies in Japan, and but they have no clue these things are going on. These things that are so important in other spaces because these things
Right.
have been passed down properly. So one of my goals is really to kind of be a vessel to kind of merge and pass these and kind of link these environments when it comes to higher education and K-12 space.
That sounds pretty cool. And I think that would probably be a great advantage to them to know that they are being studied. It'll bring a different kind of for lack of better terms, arrogance or
Mm-hmm.
a self-motivation, self-esteem to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where can our listeners connect with you? Like if there were students or teachers or some.
Of course. So we are on all the social media things you can imagine. So the school to find us on Instagram, we're PISOTA. So we also kind of shorten the name. It's just our initials is PISOTA. So PISOTA is what we usually say as well. We know when we don't spell out the whole name of Phoenix International School of the Arts. So you can find
Okay.
us, of course, at our full name on Facebook. Same thing on LinkedIn. On Instagram, it's PISOTA_CCPS. And all those pages have some kind of direct connection or link to me. Or if not, I get all the things that kind of come in anyway. When it comes to the messages, I kind of check them weekly to kind of check in and see if anything was directed towards me. But you can, of course, direct in those messages to me with my name, Rickkay King, and they will get forwarded to me, and I can respond personally as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. King. I really appreciate you taking the time up to speak with me today, and giving our audience just a little bit of background about what you do. I think what you're doing is great. because not a lot of people would take the time out to even understand the English language, let alone African American vernacular. So I think it's really great.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you guys having me on today.
Thank you very much. I wish you much success going forward. Good luck on your dissertation. I hope you finish pretty soon.
Let's
good
go.
luck.
We'll see.
I know that's got to be like the biggest thing right now.
It is a wait, but it's what I signed up for. So here we are.
Right. All right. Well, you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I want us to keep in touch, and hopefully we can connect on a couple of projects down the line.
We'll do. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much. You guys have a good one.
All right. You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
It's your boy JR dropping them beats.